now 2 o'clock, so that means it's time for the live British Wildlife Tales Children's Illustration Workshop. My name's Carl and I am the author and illustrator of the British Wildlife Tales series of children's books. Enough about those. You'll find out about those if you look on the website, and I'll leave that up to you. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to teach you a little bit about some of the big birds that live in the UK, at least for part of the year. Big birds. What could it be? Really big birds. Bigger than my arm span, okay? So, or at least 2 of them are. Probably 3 of them. So we've got 3 types of swan that live wild in the UK. They don't live here. Hi Alex, how you doing? They don't live here all year round. We've got the Hooper swan. We've got the Buick swan. They are Buick's swan, that is, like he owns it. They are British birds in winter. We've got the mute swan. They're British birds that live in the UK all year round. They look the same, especially from a distance, but when you get up close, or if you see them together, you can tell the difference. And I'm going to hopefully help you tell what the difference is by drawing. And we're going to draw just their heads this week. Simple drawing, subtle differences, and let's learn about the swans of the British Isles. Come over here. So these swans, we'll start off by just drawing a couple of circles, okay? No, 3 circles. Let's how are we doing for visibility? Can you all see that okay? Yes, you can. Let's have a look at how you're doing. Okay, let's look at all the marks on the paper that you can see from last time. So, right, what we're going to do, just to the left of centre, so that's the middle of the page, just off to the left, we're going to draw our first circle, okay? Doesn't matter if it's squishy or not quite circular, mine certainly aren't. And then we're going to draw another one, the same size, underneath, okay? There we go, there's another one, and another one, okay? Doesn't matter if they're not in a perfect line, there, mine certainly aren't, look, there we go. 3 circles. I want to know who's seen a swan. Anyone out there who's watching, have you seen a swan? Do you know what swans are? Massive birds. These birds, they've got enormous wingspan. So the smallest of these 3 birds, which is the top one, the first one that we're going to draw today, well actually we'll draw as we go along, but the top one is the Buick's swan. It's the smallest. It's actually about the size of a goose, okay, if you've seen a goose. Still got a really big wingspan, between 1.7 and 1.9 metres. So almost 2 metre wingspan. Okay. We often see swans when we're walking along the river. Yeah, that's so, yeah. You mostly see swans on the river in the UK. However, in the winter you might see them on farmland. And in certain areas, like some areas of the fens, you might see groups of many dozen swans, particularly near the washes, which are kind of on the edge of the fens there at Welney, a place called Welney, and near a place called Slimbridge, and near a place called Martin Mere up in the north. Slimbridge is in the southwest. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw triangles now. So we'll start off with our Buick swan. And we're going to draw a triangle, look. And that's all we're doing, is we're just going to draw the same kind of triangle. So here we go. We'll draw a little line there so we know roughly how far to go out. A flat bottom to our triangle. And there we go. So there we go. We're not being very neat at all because we're going to go over these in a bit more detail as we go along, but they've all got the same, more or less the same shape, bill, beak, whatever you like to call it. So the Buick swan has a slightly curved beak, okay, and the curve comes down here. We'll do this later. We're going to just do the markings because this is where it gets interesting, okay? The markings on our three swans are very different as we look at them side by side. They're all white. All three of the swans in the UK are white. They've all got yellow or orange beaks. Two of them have got yellow beaks. One of them's got an orange beak. Okay. And these two swans here, these have got the yellow beak. So we've got the Buick swan here. So the Buick swan has got a yellow beak with a black tip. And so has the Hooper swan. Right? Confused yet? Good. Okay, that's the idea. We're going to try and simplify it for you. Because what our Buick swan has got is kind of a curvy line there. So we're going to just draw a curve there, okay? There we go. Just draw a little curve there. And now, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll draw the eyes in. Right, roughly in the middle of their heads. We're going to draw another circle, okay? Roughly in the middle. You with me? There we go. Roughly in the middle. Doesn't mean exactly. So, with the Hooper swan, it's slightly different. Now, this is not exact because each individual swan has a different beak pattern. So, the Hoopers, although they have a similar style of beak pattern, they do have a different beak pattern for each individual swan. Kind of like. So what we've got here, we need to draw a V. Or a triangle. There we go. So you notice that the Buick swan has got the curve there. The Hooper swan has got the V, an arrow if you like, pointing in a different direction. Okay, they've all got slightly different markings, each individual swan. The Buick swan is the smallest of all three, about 2/3 the size of the other two. The mute swan and the Hooper swan are both around the same size, very large, 2.3 metre wingspan. The male is the larger of the two. And then this is our resident swan during the summer. This is our breeding swan. And it breeds in the summer in the UK. And we're going to need to draw another circle. And that circle is just on the top of that triangle there. Okay? Just draw another circle there. And then we're going to curve it the other way. There we go. We're going to give it another curve there. We'll go back up to the top and we're going to draw a little line coming from here. A little line coming from here going to the eye. Same here, look. There we go. Same here. And the same here. Look at the differences. See, they're becoming different now. We'll draw another circle inside here. And then we've got another mark on the mute swan, okay? And that's a curved mark there. And we'll put another mark inside it and just give it a rounded end. There we go. All right. Now this beak curves down a little bit as well. We'll go over that in a second. Because each of our swans has got a long neck, but we're only going to draw part of it. So we'll just do 2 lines coming out of the back of each of our swans' necks. 2 lines here, look. There we go. Out of each of our swans' necks. And a little bit of a sort of a story about how our swans arrive in the UK. The Buick swan, there's far fewer of those, much less likely to see a Buick swan in the UK. They'll almost all be on a lake or in farmland around a wetland area in the UK in winter. And that could be from, when I say winter, it could be from October through to as late as April, but typically March. So they hang around 4 or 5 months in the winter. They come to the UK. The Buick swan comes from Siberia, Russia, northern Russia. Comes all the way over to the UK to overwinter. The reason it comes here is because the feeding grounds in Russia become covered in snow and it's very difficult for them to feed. They come to the UK because there's less snow and they're able to feed on the farmland, the grass, the leftover sugar beet, the leftover potatoes that are left on the top of the crop that the harvest doesn't pick up. The sugar beet, the farmers are quite happy with this because it's all stuff that they've left behind deliberately. So they come along and they come and eat the leaves that have been left behind on the crop. That's the same for the hooper and for the Buick swan. But the hooper comes from a different place. The hooper comes from Iceland. And there's about 11,000 of those. So 5,000-ish swans, Buick swans will come from Siberia, from Russia. And 11,000, sorry, perhaps a few more will come from Iceland, and they'll all be hooper swans. And they eat the same thing. So they eat leftover sugar beet tops, leaves from potatoes and leftover potatoes. To a lesser extent, they'll eat grain as well. And they tend to eat the grain that's fed to them at the wetland centres. Places like the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust centres at Welney, Slimbridge and Martin Mere. There's also one in the north, and I cannot remember for the life of me what it's called. It's in Scotland, begins with a C. If anyone knows it, perhaps they'll share on the feed. Anyway, whereas our little mute swan has a slightly different diet, and our mute swan is here all year round. Okay, so it has a slightly different diet. It eats leaves still, grass, but water plants, aquatic plants, and it eats snails and insects too. Water plants, water insects. So we'll just go over, we'll start drawing again now. So we're going to give this Buick swan a slight curve to the beak, and we're just going to round off. There we go. Those angles there. And there we go. And we're going to go around the eye, around there. Now I'm going to get the rubber, because I want to rub out the little line on the inside here. We don't need that anymore, and the faint line on the outside of that beak. The line on the back of the neck, we don't need that anymore. Okay, whoops, we do need that line there, and we do need that line there. Okay, we're going to do the same here, around the back of the big circle there. This beak is more triangular. There we go. Around the eye here, circle there, and there's that line. We're going to rub out now, again, that line inside that beak there, and this line here, and just that line there. So we're just left with that outline that we've just put in. Okay. And with our mute swan, we're going to go around the outside here. Mute swan actually flies with a much straighter, it glides with a much straighter neck. But we're going to go around the outside of this rounded kind of bulge on the top. There we go. I'm going to go around the outside of that and around the outside there, and all the way back to the eye as well. And there's that eye for us. Okay. I've gone down here and I've been much darker on this line here because this area is all black on the mute swan. Okay. So we're going to take our coloured pencils now, and we're going to just colour in those eyes. And we're going to make the black markings on our beaks. Okay, so we're going to go round the eyes. We'll do the eyes first. There we go, round the eyes here. I've forgotten to rub out some of the bits on the mute swan. I'll come back and do that now, I think. let's get that rubber. We just want to rub out these lines here. We don't need those lines. And again here, we don't need to worry too much about those lines inside the area that's going to be black. But let's get rid of it just for the sake of completeness. There we go. So the Buick Swan, we've got the front of that beak and that curved area. Okay. We're just going to colour it in with our black coloured pencil. Incidentally, if you don't have time to watch all of the video now, what I do is I condense this video into a video of less than 3 minutes, so you can watch it all really quickly another time. The full video is always available live on the Facebook page, but if you go over on GB Wildlife Tales on TikTok, we'll be over there afterwards in a 3-minute. Without me rambling on, a 3-minute video without me rambling on, just the drawing with a bit of music in the background, which is kind of zany, quite loud. You might want to turn that down. There we go. So there's our Buick Swan. You can see, look, it's got a very different shape to the black on the beak. There we go. And there's our Hooper Swan. And then we're going to colour in the black on our Mute Swan. Okay, I'm just literally you don't have to be neat when you're colouring this in, just be scruffy if you like. And then we'll add the colour after, because black's not really a colour, is it? Now, all of the swans have got a black lower mandible. All right, that's the lower part of the beak. And the top part of the beak is quite large and bulky. The bottom part of the beak is quite thin. So there we go. So black lower mandible. Both the parts of the beak are called the mandible, the lower mandible, the upper mandible. Same as a human being, we've got an upper mandible and a lower mandible. The top part of our jaw, the lower part of our jaw, where our top teeth and our bottom teeth are, they're called mandibles. Same with a bird. Okay, so we're going to get ready with the colours now. Just take away some of that there. Now, yellow is what we need for the first two birds. The Buick Swan. We're going to colour in the Buick Swan just up to that little faint line that we've got here, because only their face and their bill, well, I say their face, the front of their face and their bill is yellow. Okay, there we go. Only that part. The rest of it is white, so we can leave that. In fact, I've put a mark there that I don't really need, and it's not coming off very terribly well. Don't worry about that. Same again with this Hooper's Swan. Yellow again, not orange. We're going to use orange for our Mute Swan. There we go. So these guys, they breed above the Arctic Circle. Both of these guys, they breed over there. So they come back with their young each year in the winter to feed on our crops and our wetlands. Whereas the Mute Swan, that breeds here. So the Mute Swan, we're going to take an orange pencil and colour in that beak there. Now the male and female of each species look approximately the same. They're very difficult to tell apart. The male is slightly larger in all three of these species. There we go. But look, that's the difference. Orangey beak. Now obviously if you're just seeing one of these beaks on its own, it's going to be difficult to tell these two apart. This guy, the male and the female, both have this kind of knob on the bulge on the dark part of the beak. Okay, so that's definitely going to be a Mute Swan with an orange beak. These guys, very difficult to tell apart. This one's much smaller. It looks like the size of a goose, and it's a third smaller than this. But of course, if they're not side by side, it's very difficult to tell them apart. So much more black on the beak, more of a curve here, and a slight curve on the top. This guy, straighter top of the beak, but it's very subtle, the difference. But there's definitely a marked kind of triangular wedge of yellow Got that? So we're going to write those names in now. So we're going to go, this is our Buicks. Oh dear, this is going to be the wrong way around. I'll do it again the other side. Buicks, swan. Hooper, swan. And mute, swan. Let's go the other way, okay? So we're going to go, see, watch me do it backwards now. Buick. This is so difficult. Swan. Hooper. Swan. And mute. Swan. Now our mute swan are can have up to 10, 12 young maybe. They have to have a lot of young because they're really susceptible to predators. And actually some people have been known to eat them as well. So there we go. There's our Buick swan, our Hooper swan and our mute swan. There's a bit of a legend that says that they all belong to the Queen. It's not technically true, but in the year 1482, the king decided that he didn't want commoners to own all of the swans. He didn't want them, in fact, having any of the swans. They wanted them to themselves, the aristocracy, the posh people. It's a bit unfair to say that because posh people aren't always greedy. But back then there was a lot of the more wealthy people, the people who owned the land. If you didn't own more than a certain amount of land, you couldn't own swans, which is quite ridiculous, really. So the king laid a claim to all of them, and if you owned swans, you had to have a certain amount of land. Commoners couldn't own swans, so if they were on commoners' land, they belonged to the king. And now, of course, that law wasn't actually revoked as such. So, you know, any unclaimed swans belong to the Queen technically, but that's not really true. They're all wild birds now. They don't belong to anyone. Having said that, what happened between the late 1400s and the 1600s was that you had to have a license to own swans, and you had to prove that your swans were yours. You're impressed with the writing backwards. Yeah, well, I've been practicing it for a lot of months now, Clive. So yeah, the swans were marked. They were branded, and on the beaks they would have a carved mark on each of the swans when they were hatched, and they'd carve all these swans' beaks with a certain mark that said that they belonged to X estate, Y estate, you know, whichever lord or lady owned the estate. They would have a particular mark. Anyway, they stopped doing that eventually because, you know, it became outdated, and now swans are a protected species. You can't hunt and eat swans like they did back then. They are a protected species. So, yeah, no more all of the swans belonging to the Queen or to a branded. There are still a couple of licenses though that are still valid. One of them, I think both of them are commercial businesses, but I don't think they enforce them anymore. So yeah, there we have it. They weigh quite a lot as well. These birds, they're enormous. They weigh Buick swans weigh about 6 kilos, and mute swans weigh up to 11 kilos. So quite powerful birds. Right, and what we're going to do now is we're just going to make sure that I want you guys to do this as well. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just give it some shading in the back of the. Look what I'm doing here. I'm just shading the back part of our swan's neck there Look at that. Just to give it the impression that we've got some shape there. Back part here as well. We'll do underneath the beak as well. Just to finish off the illustration element of what we're doing. Look, all the bits that don't get hit by the sun, we're just going to give it a bit of a darker edge, and we'll perhaps do some of the edge there where it meets the feathers. Beautiful white feathers. There are some other swans as well in the UK, but these are privately owned swans and they are part of a collection. They are the black swan, the black-necked white swan. They're different types of swan that you might see out and about, but they aren't native to the UK. They're actually Australian, I think, but they're part of private collections, and if you see them out and about on open water, they are escapees, if you like. And they're probably ringed, and they have just drifted off from their collections. But there we have it, our 3 species of wild swan, and we just need to make sure that we've signed our pictures now. And this is, look, there we go, we're doing the writing backwards again, just for any of you that wanted to see it the other way around. There we go, pretty similar both ways. Just zoom that down up there. Now you can see it. So there we go, there we have it, the swans of the UK. Hopefully you've learned a bit there. I'm just going to bring you back over here, and like I said, what we'll do is we'll speed that video up, take away my talking, and we'll just put in the sketches so that you can learn how to draw the picture. You can pause it if you like, but it's over on TikTok. We'll put it up on this page too. So that's GB Wildlife Tales on Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook as well. GB Wildlife Tales, and that's Tales, the proper way, not Tails. Got it? Wonderful, lovely having you here. We're almost at past, so yeah, true to form, we're hitting that half an hour mark. It's nice to keep it under half an hour because it's manageable for you guys out there. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next Tuesday, 2 o'clock. Who knows what we'll be doing then, because I never know until perhaps an hour beforehand. Take care, see you later, bye bye.